There comes a point when a man of substance and awareness might permit himself an indulgence, to romanticize a woman until she becomes the singular purpose of his journey. Let it be understood with absolute clarity, this is not the experience of love. It is a profound state of disorientation. This is not the mark of high romance. It is a strategic error of the highest order. For the very instant she is designated as the anchor of his existence, his capacity to lead is irrevocably lost, not in a year, not tomorrow, but in that precise moment. A man who cedes the authority of his own priorities to the dictates of another's emotional logic is a man who condemns himself to a life lived in the shadows. And you were not born to serve as a background element. You were born to be the system of coordinates itself. A man of strength is never valued for his compliance. His respect is earned through his inviolability, through the clear and present capability to walk away, and through his refusal to bow his head even when his heart is heavy with feeling. The world, with sophisticated guile, markets the image of a woman as the final prize. Yet in the unvarnished reality of things, she is not a reward, but the ultimate trial. And if you have not commenced your path with the establishment of crystalline boundaries, if you have failed to construct the intricate architecture of your own inner sovereignty, she will inevitably enter your life under the guise of love, and proceed to excise from it everything that defines you as a man. This amputation will not be performed with a scream, but with a gentle smile, not with a sword, but with persuasion. Not by shattering your walls, but by simply revoking your right to stand at the center of your own power. And it will be you who builds her a throne, you who kneels before it, believing this submission to be love. It is not. It is capitulation. The world, artfully masking its own agenda beneath romantic dogmas, presents him with a formula. Woman as the objective, the pinnacle of all effort, the final trophy. And the moment a man accepts this equation, he loses not love, but his very spine, because one who places a woman at the center of his world has already ceased to be the center of himself. A man who has forfeited his mission is no longer a subject of reality. He degrades into an object, perpetually swayed by external influences. His conduct is no longer governed by an internal code, but is instead sculpted by outside pressures, shaped by those who are louder, more seductive, more skilled in the manipulation of emotion than he is capable of discerning. He will call this consuming force passion, failing to recognize it as the slow, creeping corrosion of his will. His discipline will not collapse in a single dramatic failure, but it will be persistently eroded at the edges, much like the relentless moisture that seeps, drop by drop, into a plate of steel, undermining its integrity from the periphery inward. He will call this erosion intimacy, oblivious to the fact that he is losing his vector, his direction, his very axis. Then, on some unremarkable day, he will awaken to a reflection in the mirror that retains only the form of his previous face, but none of its content. He might call this experience. It is not experience. It is the culmination of a degradation that began the day he allowed the external to supplant the internal, a voluntary exchange of his formidable power for the fleeting comfort of approval. The world is not inclined to respect a man who is incapable of uttering a firm and unwavering no, and a woman is even less so. A man's boundary is not an expression of coarseness or an emotional shield. It is a sophisticated architecture erected upon the foundation of profound self-respect. It is a wall that demands no explanation, a structure that is respected precisely because its existence is non-negotiable. A man who possesses a gentle heart but lacks the fortitude to defend his own direction inevitably becomes a resource for society, for women, for anyone who can detect the scent of his compliance. To select a woman based exclusively on her appearance is not an act of desire. It is a definitive act of surrender. A man who cannot read the currents that flow beneath the surface of charm has already abdicated his power. A woman will either amplify your rhythm, expand your structure, and concentrate your forward movement, or she will dilute these things under the pretext of love, exhausting you not with overt conflict, but with her very presence. The most dangerous iteration of this erosion occurs when she accomplishes it with an endearing smile, with the phrase, "I just want to be closer." Closer to what, precisely? To the core, so that she might reconfigure it to her own specifications? A man moving toward a great objective is not obligated to be understood. He is obligated to be precise in his schedule, in his choices, in his reactions. He does not explain his boundaries, he erects them, because a boundary that requires a lengthy explanation is one that is already beginning to fracture. A woman who challenges your leadership, who audaciously tests the resilience of your standards, is not expressing admiration for you. She is searching for the point at which you will fold. And in the instant she discovers that weak link, respect dies. There will be no dramatic scenes, no formal warnings. There will simply be a cold, internal unsubscribe. You must remember this. The problem is never the woman herself. The problem is that you allowed her to occupy the throne upon which you are meant to sit. You searched for approval in her gaze when you should have been forging structure within yourself. You sought warmth in her hands when you should have been holding the compass of your own direction within yours. A woman is not the goal, she is the test. And if she does not amplify your order, clarify your trajectory, and contribute to your transformation, she is not an ally. Her beauty does not negate her influence, and that influence is the price you are paying, even when you fail to notice the transaction. True respect is born only in the presence of risk. A woman who does not fear losing you is a woman who no longer sees in you a man worthy of being kept, because the perceived risk of loss is the most accurate measure of value. The man who is prepared to walk away the moment his system is threatened is not cruel, he is respected. He is not loved in the way a soft plush toy is loved. He is admired because he belongs entirely to himself. You cannot consider yourself a leader if you are incapable of a strategic retreat, a step back taken not from weakness, but from the deliberate intention to analyze, to see who she becomes in the shadows, beyond the illumination of your light. Who is she when the gifts, the touch, and the constant validation craved by an immature ego disappear? A woman either maintains order in the absence of stimulus, or she immediately seeks to fill the vacuum in which her own reflection has begun to fade. The woman who requires a continuous influx of attention to feel her own significance is not an ally. She is a dependent system that feeds on your focus. This is not a partner. This is a predatory comfort wrapped in silk, capable of collapsing your entire architecture from within, discreetly and methodically, all while you call it intimacy. You were not born to be an explanation for someone else's instability, nor were you designed to be an emotional sponge onto which are projected unhealed traumas. You were born to be an axis, an unmoving center around which structure revolves, not chaos. And if she is incapable of existing alongside this axis without attempting to disrupt it, she is not a companion, she is a glitch in the system. A man's strength is his creative discipline, his logic converted into tangible order. And chaos is not merely a mood, it is a virus that infiltrates through pity, that latches onto your kindness, that infects your most sacred principles. The man who permits chaos to enter his domain, thinking he can heal it, is not a healer.
he is becoming the point of breach, the weakest link in his own fortress. And within this illusion of love, he loses his form, his mission, and ultimately himself, until one day he discovers that his reality no longer operates by his rules, but is instead engineered for his slow, irreversible dissolution. Forget the fairy tales. Forget the notion that your happiness is contingent upon her mood. You have no right to be gentle in the selection of a companion. You have an obligation to be merciless. Because every incorrect choice is not a failed romance. It is the resounding crash of a sledgehammer against the columns of your future fortress. And if you do not wish to one day awaken amidst the ashes that you yourself allowed across the threshold, you must filter every woman who enters your orbit as if she possessed the latent power to burn your entire city to the ground, because she does. And if you do not build the gates, she will enter as a guest and remain as corrosion. And you will not even hear the sound of the arches of your own path cracking under the weight of her steps.